What's up, guys? I'm DK, and you're watching Pro Wrestling What If, the series where I look at the different what if scenarios as terms of the world that we call professional wrestling. In the year 2020, the world had shut down because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Gyms had closed, certain retail stores had closed, amusement parks had closed, but one thing that didn't close during this time was WWE. WWE, under closed doors with no fans in attendance, would have Monday Night Raw, they would have Friday Night SmackDown, and they would even have WrestleMania 36 with no fans. So that, of course, is going to be today's subject. It's what if WrestleMania 36 had fans? How would this transpire as terms to storylines? What would happen to certain individuals? What would the whole landscape of WWE have been like had there been fans at WrestleMania 36? So the first thing I want to mention about WrestleMania 36 is that unfortunately, there probably wouldn't be two nights of WrestleMania. Now, in 2020, WWE did create the idea that there would be two nights of WrestleMania. But I feel that if WrestleMania 36 had fans, it was originally intended that it was going to be a one-night WrestleMania, so we have to treat this as if it was one night, although I do feel they would eventually change the two nights at some point. So I'm going to start off with the pre-show matches, and the two automatic ones I have are both the Women's Battle Royal and the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. Now, at WrestleMania 36 in the real timeline, those matches didn't happen because of the whole COVID-19 scare, and that they didn't want so many workers in the ring at the same time, or really a lot of people in the building. So those matches were scrapped completely, but if there was WrestleMania 36 in front of fans, the Andre the Giant and Women's Battle Royal matches would have most likely happened. And so I'll start off with who I think would have won the Women's Battle Royal in this case, and I just put Natalya. And then for the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, I would have the winner be Otis. Otis was actually pretty over going into the road of WrestleMania. He had that storyline with Mandy Rose going on, and they did have the match of Otis versus Dolph Ziggler where Otis did go over, and that's basically what the result would be here, where maybe Dolph Ziggler is the final person that Otis throws out, and it would be the same thing as we seen in that match that they had where it was a celebration of Mandy Rose and Otis, as you had in the real WrestleMania timeline, but now it's in front of fans. So match one of the main show that I have is Kevin Owens versus Seth Rollins in a no disqualification match. Now, this was a pretty good match when we saw it at WrestleMania 36, and when it comes to this match, it makes me think what spots could have been pulled off. Because if you remember in this match, Kevin Owens had jumped off of the WrestleMania sign and landed on the announce table and put Seth Rollins through it. There's no way that they would go up to the height that the WrestleMania sign usually is placed for a person to jump off of it and land through a table. But would Kevin Owens have jumped off the boat? If you guys remember, WrestleMania 37 took the exact same theme as WrestleMania 36 and was in the same venue as WrestleMania 36 was intended to be in, which was Raymond James Stadium in Tampa, Florida. And one of the main set pieces was a giant boat. So was there going to be a spot where Kevin Owens went on to that boat and jumped off of it and landed on Seth Rollins in this match? But as terms of the result of this match, I still have it where Kevin Owens does defeat Seth Rollins. So the next match I have listed, I have a six-man match for the Intercontinental Championship. The competitors are Daniel Bryan, Drew Gulak, Braun Strowman, Cesaro, Shinsuke Nakamura, and the reigning champion at the time, Sami Zayn. Now, before the pandemic had happened, there was a 3-on-1 handicap match at Elimination Chamber where Braun Strowman defended the Intercontinental Championship against the group known as the Artist Collective at the time. And if any members of the Artist Collective had given the pinfall to Braun Strowman, they would become the Intercontinental Champion, which is exactly what had happened, where Sami Zayn got the pinfall and he became the champion. And at this point, the Intercontinental Champion a lot of times was contested in a multi-man match, and especially a lot of the competitors in this match actually had matches against each other already in the real timeline of WrestleMania 36. I believe Drew Gulak had a pre-show match against Cesaro. Daniel Bryan actually fought Sami Zayn in a one-on-one match for the Intercontinental Championship. Braun Strowman had his own match, which we'll get into later on, but it makes me feel that if his match that he was involved with didn't need him in it, that he would be relegated to a match like this. I still have the result being Sami Zayn wins the match and retains the Intercontinental Champion. The third match I have listed is Charlotte Flair versus Rhea Ripley for the NXT Women's Championship. Of course, this was a match that was made before the pandemic had happened because Charlotte Flair won that year's Royal Rumble and decided instead of choosing the Raw or SmackDown Women's Championship, she was going to go after the NXT Women's Champion and would give us a great matchup between Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley. And it makes me wonder how this match would have happened in front of fans, especially because of what we had seen years later at WrestleMania 39 for the SmackDown Women's Championship. And of course, I feel the result was still going to be the same. Charlotte Flair wins the NXT Women's Championship from Rhea Ripley. Next up would be Edge versus Randy Orton in the Last Man Standing match. This is a match that I would have loved to have seen had there been fans, because there is so much that had went on during that match. I believe this match was actually the longest match in the entire WrestleMania card, between both nights being close to 40 minutes long, so this would have been an epic encounter in front of fans, especially with a lot of the stuff that we seen in that match where it was backstage. We probably would have gotten in the crowd, to be honest. We probably would have had a lot of spots happen in the audience. Even the deciding factor, considering that I believe the finish of this match happened on top of a semi-truck. And I guess I should have mentioned, obviously, Edge still wins this match. Next up would be John Cena versus the Fiend Bray Wyatt. This match, how different would it have been had it not had the Firefly Funhouse match, because Firefly Funhouse was a cinematic match that happened because the world was shut down. I think the advantage of them not having fans is what made the Firefly Funhouse so special, and I don't think that they would have been able to pull this off as good as they did with no fans. Like, the closest they probably would have ever been able to pull off is if they did some stuff like Bray Wyatt did at WrestleMania 33 against Randy Orton, where they had like the projection in the ring. That's the closest, but still then fans would have crapped all over it. This probably would have been just a straight up match, and once again, I still think that the Fiend Bray Wyatt would have went over, considering John Cena wasn't coming back to WWE the next day for Monday Night Raw. He would have been going off making whatever movie he was making next. The next match I have is the SmackDown Tag Team Championships being defended in a triple threat ladder match with The New Day, The Usos, and the current champions John Morrison and The Miz. And now as I realize as I'm recording this, I actually did forget about one other pre-show match, that being Angel Garza and Austin Theory versus the Street Profits for the Raw Tag Team Champions. And I put that match on the pre-show, considering there's no way they're putting a triple threat ladder match onto the pre-show. That's just kind of ridiculous. And this was a match that actually did not happen in the actual timeline of WrestleMania 36. Miz contracted an illness, whether it was COVID or not, and this caused the match to be just a regular triple threat ladder match where one member of each team would compete in the match. And actually in this match, I believe Jimmy Uso had injured his knee, and without that knee injury, realistically, do we get main event Jey Uso today? And I still think The Miz and John Morrison would win this match. The next match I have listed is Shayna Baszler versus Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's Championship. Now, this was a match that was determined before the shutdown because Shayna Baszler won a #1 contender Elimination Chamber match at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, and this is a match where I'm not exactly sure if it actually would have happened had there been fans, and it depends on certain circumstances. That certain circumstance is if Becky Lynch would have gotten pregnant or not. In the real timeline, we seen that Becky Lynch had faced Shayna Baszler at WrestleMania 36 and retained her title against her. However, she would drop her title over a month later to the winner of the Money in the Bank ladder match due to her ending up being pregnant and having to vacate the title. The thing about WrestleMania 36 in the real timeline that some people might not know is that this was actually pre-recorded 2 weeks before it went on air. Had she got pregnant at around the same time that the filmings had happened, and then WrestleMania happens a couple weeks later, WWE probably wouldn't have allowed Becky Lynch to actually compete due to her pregnancy, therefore having her vacate the title. There's just no way, even in Vince McMahon's mind, that he'd be like, hey pal, you willing to get a miscarriage for WrestleMania? Okay, I digress. I know that was the worst Vince McMahon impression of all time, but you get my point. The match probably would have been canceled and we would have gotten what was the 6 women's SmackDown's women's title match that we got in the real timeline. The next match I have listed is Roman Reigns versus Goldberg for the Universal Championship, which I feel like with the circumstances of what could change the landscape of WWE had this match had happened, I actually need to talk about this last, but I'm going to continue on what would be, I guess now at this point, the final two matches. So the semi-main event would be The Undertaker versus AJ Styles. In the real timeline, they had the cinematic match known as the Boneyard match. And it also makes me think that had there been fans at WrestleMania 36, that this match probably would have been a regular match, just like the John Cena and Bray Wyatt match, and that there wouldn't have been such thing as a Boneyard match. I still think it would have been an alright match because you had someone like AJ Styles who had the ability to at least carry, and I hate to say this term with Undertaker, who is my all-time favorite wrestler, a wrestler who is well past their prime. AJ Styles would have been able to carry The Undertaker to a decent match, but it still makes me wonder, what would have ended up actually being better? The cinematic match for the Boneyard match, or the match at WrestleMania in front of fans? And then the main event of the night would have been exactly the main event of night 2 of WrestleMania 36, Drew McIntyre versus Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship. Of course, Drew McIntyre had won that year's Men's Royal Rumble match and had challenged Brock Lesnar as his opponent for WrestleMania. And it was a letdown to see that Drew McIntyre, who had worked so hard to finally get a main event spot at WrestleMania, do it in front of no fans. And I think this match definitely would have been better in front of fans, for the fact that it probably would have been longer than 5 minutes, and the idea of Drew McIntyre closing out WrestleMania, winning the WWE Championship in front of fans, fireworks going off, would have been great. But now I gotta go back to Roman Reigns versus Goldberg because I still haven't talked about that yet. So Roman Reigns versus Goldberg was originally intended to happen at WrestleMania 36. We did end up getting it 2 years later at Elimination Chamber, and so unfortunately, because of the pandemic happening, Roman Reigns had actually pulled out of this match due to him being at huge risk of getting COVID, especially having just recovered from leukemia, and I believe he actually just had a newborn child. And so Roman Reigns was replaced by Braun Strowman, which I had mentioned earlier that Braun Strowman, had this not happened, probably wouldn't have been in the world title picture at all. It was just an opponent that seemed very likely could defeat Goldberg. Regardless of whether it was Braun Strowman or Roman Reigns, Goldberg was losing the Universal Championship at WrestleMania, and I think that was the plan, was for Roman Reigns to win the Universal Championship against Goldberg at WrestleMania. But once again, it brings the what if and how this result of WrestleMania, this certain match, could have changed the landscape of how we are seeing storylines today, because if Roman Reigns were to have won the Universal Championship against Goldberg at WrestleMania 36, I honestly don't think we get Tribal Chief Roman Reigns. I don't think we get this heel turn from Roman Reigns, because Vince McMahon would still be all over Roman Reigns to be the top babyface. But without this break, we don't see Roman Reigns coming back at SummerSlam. We don't see him aligning with Paul Heyman, becoming the Tribal Chief, starting the Bloodline. We don't get any of the crazy storylines that Roman Reigns does for the last few years as the Tribal Chief, had it not been with WrestleMania with no fans. Had WrestleMania had fans, we probably would see exactly the same boring big dog Roman Reigns, this is my yard now today. And that's the kind of the biggest thing as terms to what would have happened if WrestleMania had happened in front of fans for number 36. But that's all I have for this edition of Pro Wrestling What If. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know down below on what you think would have happened if WrestleMania 36 had been in front of fans. But thank you for watching, and I hope to see you guys next week for another installment of Pro Wrestling What If.